Hey guys, we're going to pick up with chapter 13. Remember, you can follow along in the PDF that's on Google Classroom, or if you have a packet, it is printed off for you in the packet. But we're going to read chapters 13 through 16 and finish up for this week's reading. So chapter 13. The first time I saw it was the time Yuri first took me to the orphan's home. It was in the park within the sight of the home. I couldn't believe my eyes. Horses going in a circle. I thought they were real. Then I saw they were not. They were made of wood, painted, going round and round to tootling music. I ran to them. I just stood there, overwhelmed. Excuse me. They were the most magnificent animals I had ever seen. Red horses, blue horses, horses of all colors, draped in gold and flowers, heads high, hooves raised as if prancing to the music. I barely noticed the children sitting on their backs. "What is it?" I said, Yuri. "Merry-go-round," he said. The horses went round and round, and each wonderful horse went by. Its large black eyes seemed to look straight at me. So proud and high were their heads. I saw for the first time how miserable were the real horses plodding the streets. Some of the children bounced and yelled, pretending to gallop. Others looked thoughtful. One was crying. Grown-ups stood watching. Someone pulled the crying child from the horse. I headed for it. Yuri grabbed me. "No." "Why?" I said. I tried to pull away. "It's not for you." I thought he was joking. "Everything is for me," I said, laughing. I believed it. He grabbed my neck in one hand. He squeezed until I couldn't breathe. He brought his face close to mine, his pickled breath. "No." We turned our backs on the merry-go-round and went to the orphan's home. From then on, I went on to sleep with the tootling music in my head. Gold-spangled horses circled my dreams. By morning, there was only straw in my ears. Whether we went out together, I tried to steer Yuri toward the merry-go-round. As we came near, I could always feel his hand slipping over my collar. I'm sure he knew I disobeyed him when I went out by myself. Many days I headed straight for the beautiful horses, but they were not always moving. "Electricity," Yuri said once, explaining why our light bulb used to work only sometimes when they lived like kings in the cellar of the barber shop. "It comes and goes, so it's an even grander treat to see the horses moving." I couldn't resist. The first day I went back alone, I was determined to ride a horse. When there was a foot of snow on the ground, but I never felt the cold. Every gilded saddle was occupied. I stood watching them go round and round. I think my eyes must have been as big as the horses, my smile as wide as those of the laughing children put together. And then the horses slowed down and came to a stop, and the music stopped, and the waiting people rushed forward and pulled their children from the saddles. I didn't wait. I leaped onto the platform and ran onto a horse. It was the most beautiful of all beautiful horses, and I had my eye on it from the very start. It was as black as coal dust under my fingernails. It had gold tassels behind its ears and a flying tail and 3 golden hooves on the ground and 1 in the air. Its head was flung high and its mouth was open as if shouting to the horses of the world, "Look at me." For those few moments I was higher, I was grander than anyone. Then a child was screeching, "He doesn't have a ticket." And a man came along and held out his hand and said, "Give me your ticket." And I said, "What's a ticket?" And the man yanked me from the horse and threw me face down into the snow. Within moments, a little girl with hair as gold as the horse's tassels stood above me, pointing and said, screaming, "He's a dirty Jew." I got to my feet. Everyone was staring at me, even the foxes on the shoulders of the ladies. I screamed back at her, "I am not." And I screamed at all of them, "I'm a gypsy." "Ooh," the golden-haired girl said with her nose, held her nose and kicked me and ran off shrieking. Other children tugged on the hands of the ladies like dogs on leashes. They flung their faces at me. "Dirty gypsy, dirty gypsy." One by one, the little girls were let go. They dashed forward, kicked me, and dashed back to the laughing ladies. Meanwhile, the boys bombarded me with snowballs. I ran, but I returned the next day and the next. Then the horses were moving. I stayed at a distance, wishing. One time, when I brought coal to the nearby orphanage, I said to Dr. Korchak, Do the orphans ride the merry-go-round? Sometimes I saw the orphans play outside, but never near the merry-go-round. Something sad came over Dr. Korchik's face. No, he said, maybe someday. I looked up at his round face, at the fabulous white goatee. Why not? I said. Because they're Jews? He looked at the merry-go-round tootling behind me. He looked at the orphans playing nearby. Girls were jumping rope. He smiled at them. Such a smile as I imagined must come from their fathers. They're children, he said. They sounded surprised. He looked down at me. Children? There was a question on his face, but I could not answer it. This thing, electricity, I did not understand it. It came and went without warning. I marveled that without it, lights were dark. The merry-go-round was still. For 2 to 3 days, we painted horses. The painted horses had not moved. I imagined I heard them screaming, "Let us run." Then in the dark of a stable one night, I awoke to the sound of music. Often in the night, I heard the music. Yuri explained that the music was only in my head, for the merry-go-round was 2 kilometers away. And besides, the merry-go-round did not turn on at night. But this time it was different. The music was not in my head. I was sure of it. I went to the window. A full moon falling on the snow lit up the world. Who needs electricity? And somewhere out of the music was playing. Yuri slept. I sneaked out of the stable. Yuri no longer tied me to himself and into the curfew. The music got louder and louder as I came near the merry-go-round. I was right. I started to run. The snow slowed me down, and there it was, lit up with lights I had barely noticed in the daytime. The music was tootling, and the horses were going round and round. The lights were blazing, and no one was there. The mysterious electricity must have come into the night and awakened the merry-go-round. I climbed onto the beautiful black horse with the golden tassels, and round we went. I went from horse to horse until I think I might have ridden them all. I rode them forward and backward. I rode them sitting down and standing up. I don't think I ever stopped laughing, and in the mix of the laughter and the music, I was sure I heard the whinnies of the horses, joyful to be moving again. And then a thought came to me. I stopped laughing. I looked at the dark hulk of the orphan's home. I jumped from the merry-go-round. I wobbled and fell into the snow, dizzy from hours of riding in circles. I ran to the orphanage. I banged on the door. I called out, "Dr. Korchik! Dr. Korchik!" A light went on inside. Locks clacked. He opened the door. Fear was in his eyes. "Dr. Korchik," I blurted, "the merry-go-round is going. Look, there's no one there. Bring the children." I took a step back. I waved, "Come on." The doctor reached into the moonlight and hauled me roughly into the house. He slammed the door and shut and bolted it. He took me by the shoulders. He snapped, "Foolish, good-hearted boy." He hauled me upstairs to a bed. As I went to sleep in the orphan's home, the moon was glowing. Morning was coming and the day was darker than night. When I awoke, Yuri was downstairs whispering with the doctor. Their cloud breath mingled. As we left the orphan's home, I waited for Yuri to smack me, to knock my head into the wall, to call me stupid. He did nothing. He said nothing. As we walked through the snow, I looked up at him. If only he had squeezed my neck, made me cry. He did not even look at me. Then and there, I lost my desire to ride the beautiful horses, but not to look. Chapter 14. As the winter went on, the trees around the merry-go-round disappeared one by one until there was nothing but stumps. And then the unthinkable happened. I was approaching the merry-go-round one day when I noticed that things looked different. A great crowd was gathered around the platform, but there was no music, no movement. As I wormed my way through the crowd, I heard someone cry out, "A Jew did it!" I wondered what it could be that a Jew had done. Then I saw it. I couldn't believe my eyes. One of the horses was gone. Only 3 hooves remained. I had come to think of the horses as so real that for a moment I was surprised to see a blonde splintered wood instead of blood and bone where the legs had been chopped off. A scrap of surviving color told me that the horses had been black. It was mine. My beautiful black and golden horse. "Find the Jew," people were calling. As I stared at the 3 horseless hooves, I felt my own anger rising. "Find the dirty Jews!" "Find the dirty Jew," the voices called over and over. and I think one of the voices I heard mine. At the edge of the park, 2 jackboots stood talking and smoking cigarettes. They found the Jew, or should I say, they found a Jew. Jews were interchangeable. One was good as another. I was to learn this many times. So before the morning was over, a Jew came stumbling through the snow with a rope around his neck. He was led out into a clearing among the tree stumps. Someone noosed around a rope. Someone noosed another rope around his neck. Someone else ripped off his clothes. Until that moment, I had not noticed how cold it was. The man seemed to shrink, seemed to pucker into himself until all there was bulging eyes. The snow covered his ankles. Make way, someone growled. Two jackboots hauled a fat black hose through the crowd. They stopped 10 meters from the shrieking man of eyes and pointed the hose at him. Water leaped out. The hose flew out of the jackboot's hand and whipped wildly around in sliced worm, like a sliced worm. People screamed and ran. The jackboots jumped onto the hose head and wrangled it. They hugged it to themselves and again pointed at the man. The water stuck to him. He flew backwards. The 2 ropes around his neck jerked to a halt. The hose men backed off some more. Things settled down and the people gathered again. Some cheered and laughed and clapped. Some merely watched. I didn't think it was possible, but the man's eyes got even bigger. I could tell he was trying to shrink even more, to vanish completely. He never made a sound. When I walked away, he was turning blue. I did not return to the merry-go-round until the snow was gone and the grass was greening among the stumps. I wondered if a man had melted away like snow. The 3 hooves were gone from the platform. The only reminder of what happened was an empty space where the beautiful black horse had been. Otherwise, all was as always. The music was tooling, the ladies were laughing, the children were going round and round. Chapter 15. Autumn. The people were going. I had never seen so many people walking. We were standing on a street corner watching. They were Jews. I knew by the armbands they wore. Every Jew had to wear a white armband with a blue star. This was a big help in telling who was a Jew and no longer wore they no longer wore beards. Until that moment, I had only seen a few Jews here, a few Jews there. I had not known there were so many. They came from many places, many streets, but they were all going in the same direction. Little children pulled wagons heaped high with toys and pots and books. Grown-ups pulled wobbling carts of furniture and clothes and pictures and rugs. It seemed they had emptied their entire houses into wagons and carts and bulging sacks over their shoulders. Larger wagons were pulled by horses, smaller carts by people. The horses and the people looked alike, plodding, eyes to the ground, leaning forward against the weight of their loads. The horses did not wear armbands, yet they too were clearly Jewish. It was a blue and black parade, and how different from the grand parade of the jackboots. So slow, so quiet, hardly a baby cried. The thump of 1,000 jackboots was now shuffled by ragged shoes. Instead of the roar of tanks, the crickety click of cartwheels. I shaded my eyes. Where are they going? I asked Yuri. The ghetto, he said. What's the ghetto? Where the damned live. Though the people were quiet, there was much noise behind them. There was whistling and cheering and breaking glass. As the moving people came down out of their houses, other people rushed in. There were fist fights in the courtyard. People sailed from their doorsteps. Top floor windows flew open. The new house people shouted over the heads of the walkers, "It's mine!" But I was more interested in this ghetto place, wherever it was. Back by curfew, it was all the warning Yuri gave me anymore. I walked with the Jews. For a while, I got carried away. Ever since the great jackboot parade, I had wanted to be in one, and so I marched along in a parade of my imagination, passing one plodding Jew after another, heads high, arms swinging, goose-stepping as if I wore tall, shiny boots myself. If anyone noticed, I was not aware. No one said a word. Soon enough, my imagination petered out, and I slowed down to the pace of the others. I found myself walking beside a boy who looked Yuri's age. The boy hauled a gray sack that bulged as if it held pumpkins. "Do you know Yuri?" I said. The boy kept staring straight ahead. I repeated myself louder. "Do you know Yuri?" The boy did not seem to know I was there. That didn't stop me. I was determined to talk. "Yuri has red hair. He's not a Jew." I was always careful not to give Yuri away. "Can I touch your armband?" He didn't respond. I touched it. "I'm a gypsy," I told him. "Maybe someday I'll get an armband too." I pulled a sausage from my pocket. I carried a sausage with me wherever I could find one. I snacked on it through the day. I held it up to him. "Would you like a bite of my sausage?" For the first time, I saw his eyes move. Then the lady walking on the other side of him said, "He's not hungry. Please go." That was ungrateful, I thought, but I did as she said. I went from person to person asking questions. "Are you going to the ghetto? Will you have a nice house in the ghetto? How much farther to the ghetto?" I never received an answer. To one and all, I offered my sausage, but no one took a bite. No one saw me, or so I believed, except for the foxes on the shoulders of some of the ladies. Their tiny black round eyes stared endlessly at mine. Once I saw a speckled mare. "Greta!" I cried out and ran to her. But all she did was slobber over my head, and I knew what could not be Greta. I heard children singing, a familiar voice calling, "Old Man Goose, 1, 2, 3. I ran. "Dr. Korchik!" He staggered and laughed as I crashed into him. "Dr. Korchik, are you going to the ghetto too?" "Yes," he said, "we're all going." "Is it wonderful?" I asked him. He smiled. "We will make it wonderful." I marched with the orphans. They were singing. I did not know the words, so I just belted out sounds. When I was with them, I wanted to be an orphan too. Between songs came the clack and rattle of the carts and walking people. Once a voice came down from the high window, "Orphan pie!" And then I saw Janina. She was trudging along with her family. The sack over her shoulder almost fell to the ground. I ran to her. "Janina!" She looked at me. She smiled. "Misha!" I burst. "Are you going to the ghetto? Where did you go? There's somebody else in your house now. I don't like him. He poured beer on my head. I smashed his foot." She laughed. I said it again. "I smashed his foot." She laughed louder. "Janina," I said, "nobody sees me except Dr. Korchik." A voice came. "They see you." It came from a man walking behind us. The piled-high cart he pulled was strapped to his shoulders. He was one of the faces I had seen around the birthday table. "That's my father," said Janina. "They don't look at me," I said to Janina's father. The cart behind him creaked and rattled. "They're afraid of you," he said. I laughed. "Nobody's afraid of me." Janina glared at me. "Don't laugh at my father. If he says they're afraid of you, they're afraid of you." I looked up at him. Like everyone else, he stared straight ahead. His eyes were large and chestnut brown like Janina's. "Why are they afraid of me?" I said. Before he could answer, Janina piped, "Because you're not a Jew." Why do you think?" I could not imagine such a thing. People afraid of me? I took out the sausage. "Want a bite?" "No," came a woman's voice, but it was too late. Janina had snatched the sausage and ripped off a big bite. She handed it to her father. He looked at it for a while and finally took a bite. He held it out for the lady, but she shook her head. Another hand reached over and snatched it. This man finished it off. "That's my Uncle Shepsel," said Janina. "He lives with us." I reached for Janina's sack. "I want to carry it." She gave it to me and at once went skipping ahead. I slung the sack over my shoulder. It wanted to pull me backward. "What's in there?" I called. Janina came skipping back. "All my favorite things, except my scooter. Mama wouldn't let me bring my scooter." She glared at the lady. I pointed to her armband. "Do you like it?" I said. "Tobias," said Janina's mother. "Never mind," said her father. "He's the boy." "I know, the thief. Never mind." And then there was noise up ahead. The rattle of cartwheels grew louder. "Come, come." Janina's father grunted and leaped into the harness until he was practically level to the street. The parade was going faster. Dropped pots rang like sick trolley bells. People were shouting. People were running. Chapter 16. A closet, said Yuri. A closet, I said. I footed a line in the dirt, dividing our stall in half. This big. That's what Uncle Shepsel said. We're living in a closet. I was telling him about the day. I told him how I met Janina and her family and that everyone rushed into the ghetto, and that's how I knew the ghetto must be a wonderful place. I told him how we went into the courtyard, a dirt square surrounded by high flat walls of houses, and how Janina's father sent Uncle Shepsel. Hurry, hurry! And Uncle Shepsel dashed into one of the houses and up the stairs, and Janina and I followed him. But I was last because of the sack. And Uncle Shepsel planted himself in a doorway on the 4th floor, and we planted ourselves too until Janina's mother and father lumbered up. And we went back down and unloaded the cart and carried the things upstairs. And some things needed 2 or 3 people to carry, but there was always one person left behind, planted in the house doorway. And the house was a madhouse. That's what Janina's mother said, a madhouse. Because so many other people were doing the same thing, and there was only one stairway, and someone was planted in every doorway. When everything was carried up, Janina's father and Uncle Shepsel broke apart the cart with hammers and kicks and carried the gray splintered cart pieces up to even the wheels. When everything was finally in and Janina's father shut the door, that's when Uncle Shepsel said, "We're living in a closet." I told Yuri what happened when I left. Janina wanted to walk down to the courtyard with me, but her mother said no. So she went with me to the landing outside the door, and then she said, "Wait," and went back inside. When she came out, she was grinning. "Close your eyes and hold out your hand." I did as she said. I felt something in my hand. Open. It was a piece of candy, a buttercream with hazelnut heart. A buttercream with a hazelnut heart. Except it was only half a candy. Even half the hazelnut was gone. "I didn't know what it was until I bit it," she said. "Then I saved it for you." I ate it. I hadn't had one in a long time. I had thought I would never taste another. She kept grinning, and I ran downstairs. When I returned to the ghetto, there was a wall in the way. Men were building it with bricks. It was 3 of me high. I walked along until I came to a section that had not yet been completed, where the wall was only a couple of bricks high. I stepped over. Someone yelled. I ran. Running wasn't easy because, again, I was carrying a large sack. This time, the sack was filled with food. The harvest was in, and the pickings were good for quick hands and feet. I found the house. It was on Niska Street. I climbed the stairs to the door. I knocked. A gruff voice said, "Who's there?" "Misha Pilduski." I heard a squeal, then a rattle of locks. The door flew open. Janina threw her hands. "Misha!" Janina's mother lay on a mattress in the corner of the room. She opened one eye and grunted. "You again?" "What's that?" said Janina, pointing to the sack. Uncle Shepsel slammed the door shut and locked it. "Food," I said. There was a square table in the middle of the room. I dumped out the sack. Janina clapped. "Food!" Turnips and apples rolled onto the table and off to the floor. There were bunches of carrots and celery and loaves of bread and the jars of jam and molasses and bags of sugar and links of sausage. Everyone gathered around. Even Janina's mother got up from the mattress. "Where did you get that?" said Janina's father. "Many places," I said. Uncle Shepsel snapped a carrot in half. "The smelly, nibble-footed thief." Janina's mother opened up a white, dusty bag. She dipped in a fingertip, tasted it. "This is baking powder. You need an oven to bake. Does he see an oven in here?" She returned to the mattress. She lay facing the wall. "I remember ovens. I had one." She coughed once. "I was a human being once." Uncle Shepsel looked at her with sad eyes. "Once upon a time." "There was a wall outside," I said. Why is there a wall?" "Keep out the riffraff," said Uncle Shepsel with a sneer. "How'd you get in?" Janina asked me. I told her I'd found a low place in the wall and simply stepped over. I added, "I can go anywhere." I was not boasting. I was simply stating a fact. I had come to love my small size, my speed, my slipperyliness. Sometimes I thought of myself as a bug or a tiny rodent slipping into places that eyes could not even see. There was a knock on the door. Uncle Shepsel's finger flew to his lips. "Don't speak," he whispered. "We're not here." Then he sagged as Janina's father called out, "Who's there?" "Hiram Lefkowitz," came to the door. Janina's father unlocked the door. "Yes, come in." As Uncle Shepsel threw a coat over the food on the table, Hiram Lefkowitz came in. He took off his hat and held out a piece of paper. "Dr. Milgram." Janina's father took the paper. "I'm not a doctor." He went to the waist-high, box-looking thing squatting on the floor and pulled at it. It opened up like wings. It was a chest with many little drawers. On either side of the chest were little shelves of jars, some with powders, some with liquids of different colors. It reminded me of a barber shop. I wondered how the bottles had survived the rickety trek across the city. Janina's father took something from the drawer, put it in a little envelope, and gave it to the man. The man pulled an apple from his pocket. He looked about to cry. "I wish—" "Go," said Janina's father, ushering the man out. "No need. Go." The man reached back to touch Mr. Milgram. "Shalom. Shalom." Uncle Shepsel shut and bolted the door. We wagged a finger in the face of Janina's father. "By tomorrow, this whole place will be overrun." Mr. Milgram pulled in the wings. The chest of drawers became a plain-looking box again. "What would you like me to do? Save it all for ourselves?" He gave me a prescription. I did my job. "There'll be nothing left in a week. They'll clean you out. Maybe we'll all be out of here in a week. If we're out of here, it will be in our graves." He pointed out the one window. "You think they're putting all this wall up only to last a week? We'll be lucky to ever get out of here." He was shouting. Janina's mother groaned on the mattress. Janina and I were in a corner that would become our corner. "My father's a pharmacist," she told me. "What's a pharmacist?" I said. "A pharmacist makes medicine." "What's medicine?" She looked at me strangely. "Medicine makes people better when they're sick. It's like pills and castor oil." She made a face. "Ugh." "Your father is Tobias Milgram?" I said. She beamed. "Yes." "You are Janina Milgram?" "Yes." "I am Misha Poluski." She clapped her hands. "Yes." Uncle Shepsel stared at us. Janina stuck out her tongue at him. I giggled. Not only did I have my very own last name, but now I knew someone else's. I giggled as if I'd been tickled. Okay, we're going to stop at chapter 16. Make sure that you are answering the questions in the Google Doc, the study guide 9 through 16 for this week. And also be studying for your quiz, because you will have a quiz on what we have read so far. So I hope you are having a great weekend and have a great week. And I will read again and see you guys next week. Bye-bye.